Welcome to Hidden Chapters, where the pages of time turn again and forgotten voices whisper their truths. Today, we're exploring a story of bravery so profound it defies belief, a story America often forgets to teach, the story of the Igbo captives. In the history of American slavery, there are stories of capture, stories of chains, and stories of survival against impossible odds. But there is one story so powerful, so haunting, that it has been whispered for more than 2 centuries. A story of African captives from what is today eastern Nigeria, who made a final, defiant choice. Rather than live enslaved, they chose to die free. This is the story of the Igbo captives who walked into the ocean. This is Igbo Landing. Before we reach that shoreline, we must understand the world that created it. Between the 1500s and the 1800s, over 12.5 million Africans were forcibly taken from their homelands and shipped across the Atlantic. More than 2 million died before ever reaching land. West and Central Africa, including regions that are now Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon, became major targets for European and American slave traders. Eastern Nigeria, home to the Igbo people, was particularly vulnerable. The Igbo were farmers, traders, and philosophers, deeply rooted in concepts of personal freedom, dignity, and reincarnation. For many of them, enslavement was a fate far worse than death itself. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, slave raids intensified across Igboland. Men, women, and children were seized sometimes through warfare, sometimes through betrayal, sometimes sold by rival groups under pressure from European demand. Captured Igbo men and women were forced southward to slave ports, then packed into the suffocating holds of ships bound for the Americas. One such group was loaded onto an American slave ship in 1803. Their destination was Savannah, Georgia, in the United States of America. They were about to face a future they would refuse to accept. Most historians identify the vessel as the schooner York. It was an American ship, operated by American slave traders. It carried approximately 75 to 80 Igbo captives. The exact number is debated, but this range appears consistently in historical records. These men and women had survived the horrors of the Middle Passage, that brutal journey across the Atlantic, only to be confronted with a life they deemed unlivable. Their will, however, was far from broken. When the York reached the Georgia coast, the captives were transferred to smaller boats near St. Simon's Island. They were shackled, weak, and exhausted, but as they were rowed toward the shore, something incredible happened. According to historical accounts and powerful oral traditions, the Igbo captives rose up. They overpowered their guards and took control of the boat. For one brief, shining moment, they were free again, but that freedom came at a terrible price. As the shoreline of their new prison came into view, the captives made a collective decision. They knew exactly what awaited them: brutal plantation labor, the sting of the whip, the loss of their names, their families, their entire identities. They knew they would be treated as property, not people. In Igbo belief, death was not the end. The spirit could return home, back across the water, to the land of their ancestors. And so, one by one, hand in hand, they walked into the water. Eyewitness accounts say they sang as they went. Others say they chanted in Igbo, declaring they would rather meet their ancestors than live in chains. The tide closed over them. Approximately 75 Igbo men and women drowned themselves. The place became known, forever after, as Igbo Landing. The event terrified slave owners in the region. Planters began calling Igbo people unmanageable, rebellious, and dangerous, not because they were weak, but precisely because they would not submit. Their refusal to be broken was a threat to the entire system. For generations, enslaved Africans whispered the story of Igbo Landing. Some claimed the spirits of those who drowned still walked the shore at night. Others said the water there refused to forget what it had witnessed. For years, the story of Igbo Landing was dismissed as mere folklore, a ghost story. But historians later confirmed the key facts: the ship named the York, its arrival in Georgia in 1803, and the mass drowning of its Igbo captives. Today, Igbo Landing is recognized as a sacred site of resistance, a powerful symbol of African dignity, and one of the most profound acts of defiance in the entire history of American slavery. These people did not die because they were weak. They died because they refused to be owned. They were not nameless. They were not hopeless. They were not defeated. They were people who made a choice history rarely gives us permission to admire. In a world determined to erase them, they left behind something slavery could never take: agency, resistance, and dignity. This is not just African history. This is American history, and it deserves to be remembered. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it so these voices are never silenced again. We have a question for you. If you were forced to choose between freedom and survival, what would freedom mean to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.